It's a shocking and terrifying new danger known as needle spiking.
Of security guards. One says he felt a prick on his neck. He passed out and was revived by the opioid antidote Narcan. Police say they found evidence of a needle mark.
Most of the victims think that they were spiked with a needle. Let me tell you how one of them described it.
Needle spiking wordt het genoemd. Geen drugs in je drankje tijdens het uitgaan, maar gedrogeerd worden met een naald.
January 2022. The world is slowly coming out of the pandemic, and hopes of returning to life as we know it are almost a reality. But as bars and clubs are just reopening, a new threat surfaces. In a matter of weeks, headlines are swarmed by a new epidemic: needle spiking. Victims recount a feeling of sudden pain in a specific part of their body, quickly followed by dizziness or complete loss of consciousness. But what intrigued most were the dots found on alleged victims. Besides puncture marks, what could they be? It quickly became clear that all parties were conflicted. As questions and concerns increased, media coverage seemed to fade out, eventually leaving Amsterdam's population in the dark. A pattern of consistent media coverage can be identified from January to March 2022, after which news reports fizzled out. Despite the significant number of reports and the persisting fears of the nightlife community, much of the situation remains unclear, some still calling it a phantom phenomenon. How can we protect ourselves from something we know so little about? How can we differentiate what's real and what's fake? To better understand the reality and severity of these attacks, we came in contact with an alleged victim of needle spiking.
We went casually night out to Rembrandtplein, and we were one of the bars just dancing, whatever. And I don't drink, so I was just chilling as usual. I don't know exact time, but let's say around 2 a.m. It was very crowded, so I just constantly people were bumping around and everything. You're kind of like a ball being thrown. And then I thought I bumped into a girl's purse or something, because it kind of felt like someone pinched you or something, or keys or something like that. A weird tiredness suddenly. That was that's kind of what the symptoms of having pain in the arm was kind of, that was okay, it might have been needle spiking. Yeah, well, no one did anything, but the one that kind of was the worst, because after waiting for and doing the whole procedure after 5 hours and going back and forth from police and hospital, the nurse basically started laughing at our faces, because she was like, yeah, police does terrible job, they have made so many mistakes, whatever. And I was just standing there thinking I want to punch you in the face and I'm done, because she just, there's no empathy, I swear, no empathy from them, basically. Because in general, since moving to the Netherlands, and especially in this situation, you see that doctors don't care much about you. They don't want to help you, which is their job, but they just don't, they choose not to. And also police, it's just taking over responsibility and just throwing it to another person. This is something you really cannot impact. You're just there and it happens in like this, you don't even realize it. And that's kind of a scary part, and it's probably traumatic subconsciously, but for me just the spiking part wasn't as traumatic as the whole how the Netherlands authorities handled it was. I honestly don't think there's enough. I don't read about it or anything, but I know it's not talked about. Especially from my experience, what they told me when in hospital, one of the things they told me also was yeah, from our research or whatever, no one got an infection from being spiked, and my like, because they don't deal with it, like they and me being like completely kind of fine after that happened, I gave up. And I can also imagine people that are feeling much worse, like they've been drinking or under influence of some drugs and then getting spiked. Of course they would give up after waiting for 6 hours, and they wouldn't go maybe forward because they lost any hope in it.
Medical assistance to victims of needle spiking has its shortcomings, and clearly, the victims are again paying the price. We were able to learn more through our exchanges with Dr. Ayadi, anesthesiologist at the Surgery Center of Prince in Paris, as well as a medical student in Amsterdam. GHB, also known as a prominent date rape drug, was the first main suspect in these cases, but its use for needle spiking turns out to be unlikely. Hypnotic drugs, specifically midazolam, Hypnoval, propofol diprivan, or even droperidol better fit the crime. Victims are also exposed to infectious risks, such as AIDS or hepatitis B or C. Needle spiking may even lead to overdose or paralysis. Evidently, the situation is credible and extremely dangerous. So what concrete steps are being taken towards public safety? The Amsterdam volunteers provide assistance, information, and recommendations to visitors. In addition to helping tourists, they often patrol around Rembrandtplein to assist individuals in the nightlife setting.
First hear about needle spiking in Amsterdam?
So, that's a good question. I think 4 years ago. To the boy and girls you sometimes do. Sometimes.
Yeah?
Sometimes. The last time was 4 weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah.
First appearing 4 years ago, and as recent as 4 weeks ago. Considering the media's role in the perception of these issues, we came in contact with an online redacteur at De Volkskrant. Martin Albers wrote an article in May 2022 addressing the issue of needle spiking in Amsterdam.
There are a lot of things that you can say about this topic, but there are very few things that, it's very hard to definitively prove that it happened, and it's very hard to definitively disprove. That way that the system works makes it very hard to later for both the victim but also for me as a journalist to verify some of the stories that victims have. But I think, I do speak about it with my editor, like, okay, how do we want to phrase these things? Do we want to phrase them as having happened, or do we want to phrase them as stories? And how do we want to call the people? Do we call them victims, or do we call them alleged victims? So he did tell me the drugs that he thought might be usable. And I think in my first version, I even had them in the article, and then I sent it to him to check. And he was like, well, I'd actually rather not that you write them down. And I think later on I agreed with him, because I think, as I also write in the article, it's also something that can be easily copycatted, like maybe it happened once and then people read about it in the news and they think like, oh, well, I'm going to do that as well. Might be a good idea, right? As soon as media start reporting about it, suddenly within one weekend it happens in all these different cities. Like initially this wasn't, I'd never heard of it, and I think many people hadn't. Because I think these rumors play a very big role in these kind of stories, right? A lot of the reports are not confirmed, but like it might be the case that local media, for example, said that, oh, on social media we've read that it happened to this many people. The more often you see something being reported, the more likely you think, oh, there must be something behind this, right? It cannot be coincidence that so many people are coming forward with these kind of stories. Just the sheer amount of reports in the media is a very, very big factor in shaping public perception of an issue. There were very few news organizations and very few experts who outright said, this never happened, it's complete bullshit. Also, there were also very few news organizations who completely took the stories at face value. I think there were about 2 or 3, and they were all saying that I was not taking the problem seriously, that I was victim blaming. It was especially the later part where also this folk story expert comes into play, and he sort of explains that, I don't know if I wrote this down, but he had this quote like, well, it never happens to you when you're drinking coffee, right? It always happens to you when you're drinking alcohol. But when I speak to an expert, I don't have to fully agree with the expert in order to quote them. If I think the expert is knowledgeable about the topic and can back up the claims that they make with at least some kind of evidence or at least reasonable arguments, then that's good enough. Like if I'm only going to quote experts who I fully agree with, then it's not going to be very balanced journalism. Yeah, so I know that a couple questions were asked in Parliament, and I think that's where the response from the minister came from. And I think there were a couple of safety and nightlife organizations that were a bit more, that said, okay, we're going to pay attention to this and we're going to make it a priority. But I feel like these things were all rather short term, and we're now like a year on, and I feel like it's been completely forgotten and probably not a priority anymore.
In November 2022, Amsterdam's mayor reportedly announced that when the police receive a report of spiking, a GGD doctor will immediately go to the police station for blood and urine tests. Efforts of prevention have yet to be seen.
We were just in a bar that we go regularly with my friends, and that was a quiet night. There weren't too many people. We had a beer, we had another one, and we went outside for a cigarette. Even though it was quiet, there were some people, and we wanted to play pool, but there were some guys playing it. So we went to a table right next to the pool table. The thing is, I finished my beer, and I want to say that I didn't even have time to get another one before I totally blacked out. I went to the bathroom, I threw up on the street again. Of course, I don't remember any of this. I got home, apparently threw up more there, and in the morning too. And I was feeling terrible the whole day next day. At first it was more like embarrassment, because I didn't really realize that I didn't even realize that it could be a possibility that I got spiked. I thought I didn't understand what happened, and I was embarrassed. And my friends had taken a video of me, and I saw that, and I was all over the place, and no, it was scary.
The significant number of male victims has made needle spiking especially intriguing. Who is the target and why?
So I think it's a Saturday night. I went there with two of my friends. They're now my flatmates, so there were like three of us, to like one of the main gay clubs in London. I didn't drink anything or take anything before going in. I was like sober, and we danced sober for about like an hour. About like 15 minutes later, I realized I sort of like started like losing my hearing. Like I can't really hear anything. Like all the music kind of like died down, and I couldn't really see anything as well. Like everything just turned into like black and yellow. So I was like talking to my friends, like, hey, I think I need to lie down for a bit. So we went to the other room, this little sofa area. So I just lied down there for about like an hour. I think I kind of like passed out for like about an hour or so. And when I sort of like regained consciousness, it felt a bit better, but like in terms of my seeing and my hearing, it got better, but then I felt like really dizzy, so we just left. I even thought that like maybe I got too drunk, but I didn't drink anything the whole night. Like after the whole summer of spiking, the entire nightlife industry has got like a lot more strict when it comes to safety measures, stuff like that. The coverage, the increased coverage, of spiking accidents in the UK, it definitely changed how people approach nightlife. I know that a lot of people actually in the UK have stopped going out. I would say that would be a shame if safety issues like spiking ended up killing nightlife. And now it's sort of like common practice to please like I said, share a location, text everyone you got home. Like nightlife in itself can also be viewed as like a social infrastructure, whereas it offers sort of like a place for gathering, a place of community building, a place of self-expression, a place of, especially for marginalized communities, sort of like gather and socialize. So, and I think that's really crucial for like sort of like a big or even diverse city like London or Amsterdam. I think we all agree how important it is to keep nightlife alive, and it's essential that people feel safe and trust each other in a scene like this. You know, otherwise there's no nightlife left.
Lingering questions persist. Is needle spiking real? Has it disappeared? Has the media painted an accurate picture or sold us a lie? While definite answers remain elusive, one fact remains. Needle spiking's impact extends beyond the victims to the entire nightlife community. You may not hear about it anymore, but those impacted still suffer the consequences.
After something like that happens to you, you're just like cautious about things.
Let us challenge these perceptions and strive for a safer nightlife culture. We must keep the nightlife alive.